Hello, Views of the Future. I'm Endragh, and this is more Color of Magic. Last time, Rincewind was plunging to his death, and Twoflower had summoned up a dragon. Oh, and Hearn is now fighting Liza's brothers to maybe marry Liza. Who knows if he'll succeed or not, but let's go on, shall we? Half a dozen guards chose that moment to turn the bend in the corridor. They stopped, open-mouthed. Then one remembered sufficiently to raise his crossbow and fire. The dragon's chest heaved. The coral exploded into flames, fragments in midair. The guards scurried out of sight. A fraction of a second later, a wash of flames played over the stones where they had been standing. Twoflower looked up in admiration. "Can you fly, too?" he said. Of course. Twoflower glanced up and down the corridor, and decided against following the guards. Since he knew himself to be totally lost already, any direction was probably an improvement. He edged past the dragon and hurried away, the huge beast turning with difficulty to follow him. They padded down a series of passages that crisscrossed like a maze. At one point, Twoflower thought he heard shouts a long way behind them, but they soon faded away. Sometimes the dark arches of a crumbling doorway loomed past them in the gloom. Light filtered through dimly from various shafts here and there, bounding off big mirrors that had been mortared into angles of the passage. Sometimes there was a bright glow from a distant light well. What was odd, thought Twoflower, as he strolled down a wide flight of stairs and kicked up billowing clouds of silver dust motes, was that the tunnels here were much wider, and better constructed too. There were statues in niches set in the walls, and here and there faded but interesting tapestries had been hung. They mainly showed dragons by the hundreds, in flight or hanging from their perch rings, dragons with men on their backs, hunting down deer and sometimes other men. Twoflower touched one tapestry gingerly. The fabric crumbled instantly in the hot, dry air, leaving only a dangling mesh where some threads had been plaited with fine gold wire. "I wonder why they left all this," he said. "I don't know," said a polite voice in his head. He turned and looked up into the scaly horse face above him. "What is your name, dragon?" said Twoflower. "I don't know." "I think I shall call you Nine Reeds." "That is my name, then." They waded through encroaching dust in a series of huge, dark-pillared halls, which had been carved out of solid stone, with some cunning too. From floor to ceiling, the walls were a mass of statues, gargoyles, brass bas-reliefs, and fluttered columns that cast weirdly moving shadows where the dragons gave an oblong illumination at Twoflower's request. They crossed the lengthy galleys and vast cavern amphitheaters, all awash with deep, soft dust and completely uninhabited. No one had come to these dead caverns in centuries. Then he saw the path, leading away into yet another dark tunnel mouth. Someone had been using it regularly, and recently. It was a deep, narrow trail in the gray blanket. Twoflower followed it. It led through still more lofty hallways and winding corridors, quite big enough for a dragon, and dragons had come this way once, it seemed. There was a room full of rotting harnesses, dragon size, and another room containing plate and chainmail big enough for elephants. They ended in a pair of green bronze doors, each so high that they disappeared into the gloom. In front of Twoflower, at chest length, was a small handle shaped like a brass dragon. When he touched it, the doors swung open instantly, and with a disconcerting noiselessness. Instantly, sparks crackled in Twoflower's hair, and there was a sudden gust of hot, dry wind that didn't disturb the dust in the way that ordinary wind should, but, instead, whipped it up momentarily into unpleasantly half-living shapes before it settled again. In Twoflower's ears came the strange shrill twittering of the things locked in the distant dungeon dimension, out beyond the fragile lattice of time and space. Shadows appeared where there was nothing to cause them. The air buzzed like a hive. In short, there was a vast discharge of magic going on around him. The chamber beyond the door was lit by a pale green glow. Stacked around the walls, each on its own marble shelf, were tier upon tier of coffins. In the center of the room was a stone chair on a raised dial, and it contained a slumped figure which did not move, but said, in a brittle old voice, "Come in, young man." I'm not going to be able to do a good old man voice. Heads up. Twoflower stepped forward. The figure in the seat was human, as far as he could make out in the mucky light, but there was something about the awkward way it was sprawled in the chair that made him glad he couldn't see it any clearer. "I'm dead, you know," said a voice from what Twoflower feverishly hoped was a head, in conversational tones. "I expect you can tell." Said Twoflower. "Yes," he began to back away. "Obvious, isn't it?" said the voice. "You'd be Twoflower, wouldn't you? Or is that later?" "Later?" said Twoflower. "Later than what?" He stopped. "Well," said the voice, "you see, one of the advantages of being dead is that once it's is that one is released as it were from the bonds of time, and therefore I can see everything that has happened or will happen all at the same time, except that, of course, I still know that time does not, for all practical purposes, exist." "That doesn't sound like a disadvantage," said Twoflower. "You don't think so? Imagine every moment being at one, the same time Imagine every moment being at once and at one and the same time, a distant memory and a nasty surprise, and you'll see what I mean. Anyways, I now recall what it was I am about to tell you. Or have I already done so? That's a fine-looking dragon, by the way. Or did I say that yet?" "Is it really? It is rather good. It just turned up," said Twoflower. "It turned up?" said the voice. "You summoned it." "Yes, well, all I did—" "You have the power." "All I did was think of it." That's what the power is. Have I already told you that I am Greicha the First? Greicha? Greicha. Or is that next? I'm sorry, but I haven't had too much experience of transcendence. Anyways, yes, the power. It summons dragons, you know. "I think you already told me that," said Twoflower. "Did I? I certainly intended to," said the dead man. "But how? I've been thinking about dragons all my life, but this is the first time one has turned up." "Oh, well, you see, the truth of the matter is that dragons have never existed, as you, and until I was poisoned some 3 months ago, I understand existence. I'm talking about the true dragons. Dragonus mobilis, you understand? The swamp dragons, Dragonus vulgaris, is a base creature and not worth our consideration. The true dragons, on the other hand, is a creature of such refinement of spirit that they can only take on form in this world if they are conceived by the most skilled imaginations. And even then, the imagination must be in some place heavily impregnated with magic, which helps to weaken the walls between the world of the seen and unseen, and then the dragon pops through, as it were, and impress their form on this world's possibility matrix. I was very good at it when I was alive. I could imagine up to 500 dragons at a time. Now Liza, the most skilled of my children, can barely imagine 50 rather nondescript creatures. So much for her progressive education. She doesn't really believe in them. That's why her dragons are rather boring, while yours," said the voice of Gretcha, "is almost as good as some of mine used to be. A sight for sold eyes. Not that I have any to speak of now." Twoflower said hurriedly, "You keep saying you're dead." "Well, the dead, they, don't talk much, as a rule. I used to be an exceptionally powerful wizard. My daughter poisoned me, of course. It is the general accepted method of succession in our family, but... I'm just checking my voice. Okay, you can hear it. The corpse sighed, or at least a sigh came from the air a few feet above it. It soon became obvious that none of my 3 children is sufficiently powerful to wrest the lordship of the Wernbergs from the other 2. A most unsatisfactory arrangement. A kingdom like ours has to have one ruler. So I resolved to remain alive in an unofficial capacity, which of course annoys them all immensely. I wouldn't give my children the satisfaction of burying me until there is only one of them left to perform the ceremony. There was a nasty wheezing laugh. Twoflower decided that it was meant to be a chuckle. So it was one of them that kidnapped us? Said Twoflower. Liza, said the dead wizard's voice. My daughter. Her power is strongest, you know. My son's dragons are incapable of flying more than a few miles before they fade. Fade? I did notice that we could see through the ones that brought us here, said Twoflower. I thought that was a bit odd. My voice keeps going weird. Of course, said Gretchen. The power only works near the Wernberg. It's the inverse square law, you know. At least, I think it is. As the dragons fly further away, they begin to dwindle. Otherwise, my little Liza would be ruling the world by now, if I knew anything about it. But I can see I mustn't keep you. I expect you'll be wanting to rescue your friend. Twoflower gasped. Hern? He said. Not him. The skinny wizard. My son Lorit is trying to hack him to pieces. I admire the way you rescue him. Will, I mean. Twoflower drew himself up to his full height. An easy task. Where is he? He said, heading towards the door with what he hoped was an heroic stride. Just follow the pathway in the dust, said the voice. Liza comes to see me sometimes. She still comes to see her old dad, my little girl. She was the only one with the strength of character to murder me. A chip off the old block. Good luck, by the way. I seem to recall I said that. We'll say it now. The rambling voice got lost in a maze of tension as Twoflower ran along the dead tunnels, with the dragon looming along easily behind him. But soon he was leaning against the pillar, completely out of breath. It seemed ages since he had anything to eat. Why don't you fly? Said Nine Reeds inside his head. The dragon spread its wings and gave an experimental flap, which lifted it momentarily off the ground. Twoflower stared for a moment, then ran forward and clambered quickly onto the beast's neck. Soon they were airborne, the dragon skimming along easily a few feet from the floor, and leaving a billowing cloud of dust in its wake. Twoflower hung on as best he could as Nine Reeds swooped through a succession of caverns and soared around a spiral staircase that could easily have accommodated a retreating army. At the top they emerged into the more inhabitable region, the murators at every corridor cornered brightly polished and reflecting a pale light. I smell other dragons. The wings became a blur, and Twoflower was jerked back as the dragon veered and sped off down a side corridor like a gnat-crazed swallow. Another sharp turn set them soaring out of a tunnel mouth in the side of a vast cavern. There were rocks far below, and up above were broad shafts of light from giant holes near the roof. A lot of activity on the ceiling, too, as Nine Reeds hovered, thumping the air with his wings. Twoflower peered up at the sharp shape of roosting beasts and tiny men-shaped dots that were somehow walking upside down. This is the roosting hall, said the dragon in a satisfactory tone. As Twoflower watched, one of the shapes far above detached itself from the roof and began to grow large. Another break. Rincewind watched as Lorit's pale face dropped away from him. This is funny, gibbled a small part of his mind. Why am I rising? Then he began to tumble in the air, and reality took over. He was dropping to the distance. Genarmo speckled rocks. I don't know what that word is. Guano speckled rocks. His brain reeled with the thought. The word of the spell picked just that moment to surface from the depths of his mind, as they always did in times of crisis. Why not say us, they seemed to urge. What have you got to lose? Rincewind waved a hand in the gathering slipstream. Ashona, he called. The word formed in front of him in cold blue flames that steamed in the wind. He waved the other hand, drunk with terror and magic. Eberus, he intoned. The sound froze into a flickering orange word that hung up beside its companion. Oh God. Uh, Urshoring, Cavanti, Pithan, Nagard, Ferngomil. As the words blazed their rainbow colors around him, he flung his hands back and prepared to say the eighth and final word that would appear in constructive octarine light and seal the spell. The immediate rocks were forgotten, he began. The words were knocked out of him, the spell scattered and snuffled out. A pair of arms locked around his waist, and the whole world jerked sideways as the dragon rose out of its long dive, claws grazing just for a moment the topmost rocks of the Wernberg's nose and floor. Twoflower laughed triumphantly. Got him! And the dragon, curved gracefully at the top of his flight, gave a lazy flip of his wings and soared through a cave mouth into the morning air. At noon, in a wide green meadow on the lush tableland that was the top of the impossibly balanced Wernberg, the dragons and their riders formed a wide circle. There was room beyond them for a rabble of servants and slaves and others who scratched a living here on the roof of the world, and they were all watching the figures clustered in the center of the grassy area. The group contained a number of senior dragon lords, and among them were Lorart and his brother Laertes. Laertes? Yeah, Laertes. The former was still rubbing his leg, with small grimaces of pain. Slightly to one side stood Liza and Herne, with some of the woman's own followers. Between the two factions stood the Wernberg Herdietary Lord Master. As you know, he said uncertainly, the not fully late Lord of the Weinberg, Gretchen I, has stipulated that there will be no succession until one of his children feels himself, or as it might be, herself, powerful enough to challenge and defeat his or her siblings in mortal combat. Yes, yes, we all know this. Get on with it, said a thin, pervish voice from the air beside him. Lord Master swallowed. He had never come to terms. Oh, sorry. Yes, yes. Oh, nope. Yeah. I can't do the old man voice now. I've lost it. I lost it in like one thing. Yes, yes. All know that. Get on with it, he said. Said a thin, peeved voice from the air beside him. The Lord Master swallowed. He had never come to terms with his former master's failure to expire properly. Is the old buzzard dead, or isn't he? He wondered. It is not certain, he quivered, whether it is allowed to issue a challenge by proxy. It is, snapped Gretchen's disembodied voice. It shows intelligence. Don't take all day about it. I challenge you, said Herne, glaring at the brothers, both at once. Laertes and Laertes exchanged looks. You'll fight both of us together? Said Laertes, a tall, wiry man with long black hair. Yeah. That's pretty uneven odds, isn't it? Yeah, I outnumber you 1-2. Laertes scoured. You arrogant barbarian. That just about does it, growled Herne. The Lord Master put out a blue-veined hand to restrain him. It is forbidden to fight on the killing grounds, he said, and paused while he considered the sense of this. You know what I mean. Anyways, he hazarded, giving up, and added, as the challenging parties, my lords, Laertes and Laertes, have choice of weapons. Dragons, they said together. Liza snorted. Dragons can be used offensively, therefore they are weapons, said Laertes firmly. If you disagree, we can fight over it. Yeah, said his brother, nodding at Herne. The Lord Master felt a ghostly finger prod him in the chest. Don't stand there with your mouth wide open, said Gretchen's graveyard voice. Just hurry up, will ya? Herne stepped back, shaking his head. Oh no, he said. Once was enough. I'd rather be dead than fight on one of those things. Die, then, said the Lord Master, as kindly as he could manage. Laertes and Laertes were already striding back across the turf to where the servants stood waiting with their mounts. Herne turned to Liza. She shrugged. Don't I even get a sword? He pleaded. A knife, even? No, she said. I didn't expect this. She suddenly looked smaller, all defiance gone. I'm sorry. You're sorry? Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I thought you said you're sorry. Don't glare at me like that. I can imagine you the finest dragon to ride. No. Yeah. The Lord Master wiped his nose on a handkerchief, held the little silken square aloft for a moment, then let it fall. A boom of wings made Hearn spin around. Lorati's dragon was already airborne and circling around towards them. As it swooped low over the turf, a billow of flame shot from its mouth, scoring a black streak across the grass that rushed towards Hearn. At the last minute, he pushed Liza aside and felt the wild pain of flames on his arm as he dived for safety. He rolled as he hit the ground and flipped onto his feet again while he looked around frantically for the other dragon. It came in from one side, and Hearn was forced to take a badly judged standing jump to escape the flame. The dragon's tipped tail whipped around as it passed and caught him a stinging blow across the forehead. He pushed himself upright, shaking his head to make the wheeling stars go away. His blistered back screamed pain at him. There we go. So, that was that chapter. I still haven't found my bookmark. So, Rincewind was falling, but was saved by Twoflower. Twoflower got to meet the old man. That's the only time you're ever going to probably hear a somewhat good old man voice out of me. Like I said, I'm not a voice actor. And Hearn has started fighting the two brothers. Will he win? Will he lose? We'll see in the next part, or tomorrow's episode. We're really getting close. Let's see. By the way, we are at page 181, and there is only 277 pages left. So we are less than 100 pages left, and then this book is done. The first ever Discworld novel. Anyways, I've been Endragh. This has been A Color of Magic. I hope I brought a smile to your face, and I will see you tomorrow night. Night, night, guys.